No Matthew Berry today, Jay. There's Denny, by the way. Matthew is still in the media hotbed that is Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I guess him and Trisha couldn't find a solution.
Upgrade today for mine, bringing in Mr. Carter. It's good to see you, Denny.
Yes.
Hey, you said it. And I'm not in a hotel room, and I don't have any issues. So maybe you're right, Jay.
Matthew is helping his son move into college. Full transparency. We didn't completely lose his sweet production setup that he had yesterday.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry back in studio, home from Tuscaloosa, and the J-Gun, Jay Croucher.
That's right, the J-Gun. J-Gun is in the house. People love it. It's catching on. It's on fire. I was in Tuscaloosa. Roll Tide, by the way. Roll Tide. And everyone was asking me, how's J-Gun doing? Will he bust a move? And I'm like, probably. He will. He's a move-busting kind of guy. Connor, before we get into the football, lots to get to in terms of obviously week 2 takeaways. We've got some injury updates as well, sleepers for you as well. But everyone's asking about my weekend in Tuscaloosa. Moving my kid to
people
Alabama.
Are curious.
I
only saw the results. I didn't see the.
Who's one person?
Anyway, I just want to point out, and Tricia, if you can just get a shot of this for me real quickly. A lot of people wondering who drinks free at the happy hour today. I'll tell you who drinks free. Matthew Berry drinks free. Matthew Berry drinks free because just watch this. Like, my kid had to move so much stuff in. I had to rent like this massive truck. I don't have any business driving a truck, Connor. Look at this damn thing.
You look so uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable. Do you have any idea how big this truck is?
It looks like you're taking your driving test.
Right. I mean, like you can't, you saw it. Like I couldn't see behind it. Like I'm like, it's this massive, because we went to try to rent a van, and they're like, and by the way, because everyone in the universe is moving into Alabama's got, 40,000 undergrads, or I don't know
all
what
or
it
nothing.
Is.
You get the big truck or nothing.
My point, exactly right. They're sold out of everything. I literally, and by the way, to get this, I had to drive like an hour to go get so I go drive an hour to find the one truck that's available, and it's a huge, massive truck, and then I got to drive it back an hour, and I'm like,
Did you have to go to Birmingham?
Yeah.
I've done this whole thing before.
No, I didn't have to go to Birmingham. I went to Bessemer, I think. Okay.
Sounds like a real place.
Yeah, and it might be. It might actually be a real place. But anyway, that's what I did. Is I drove, and then we loaded. Then we went to the store where we loaded everything up, and then we drove to where my kid's living this year, and then we unloaded it all.
Did you have to build anything?
What?
You had to build things?
Oh, I had to build. 1,000%. Look at my Instagram.
It should have been live.
I am not.
Yeah, me neither.
I am not. My wife.
Connor's pretty handy.
My wife will say, can you fix that? And I'm always just like, honey, you did not marry the fix-it guy.
We'll pay someone to do it.
You married the write a check for somebody else to fix it guy. That's who you married. That's me. Know your skill set, know your strength.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And I am not handy at all. And yet, you're damn right, I had to build stuff. I had to, if you go to my Instagram, I posted this shelf that I built. I was very proud of myself.
I saw. Yes.
Like a man.
You were very
built
proud.
it like a man.
Yes.
I was just like, yeah. Anyway, so that's why I drink free, damn it. I drink free. Cheers to me.
Cheers
to
to
me.
you, Matthew.
Because I had no business driving that truck.
It didn't look like it at all.
No.
Honestly, it looked like a little shaky. The two hands.
2 hands on the wheel, very upright pose.
Yes.
Terror look in the eye as well.
Yeah, you didn't like the concept was going on.
Have you ever driven a very big? It wasn't it wasn't an 18-wheeler, but it was somewhere between a van and 18-wheeler.
Legitimately a truck. Yeah.
It's legitimately a big truck, and you know what I mean? It's the turn. You can't see behind you, and the turning radius. I have so much more respect. Not that I didn't already, but the people that drive trucks for a living are so unbelievably talented because it's hard.
Yeah. No, I won't take any shots at you. I can barely ride a bicycle, so I just can't do anything.
You win this one.
Yeah. No, good for you, Matthew.
I appreciate that. What you can do though is you can dance, Jay Gunn. You can dance.
Everybody has their talents on this show.
Just
right.
like your fellow countrymen and women.
We do have a lot today. We got our top sleepers, of course, for you to target in drafts this year. Our best bets for offensive rookie of the year. If you want to look at some early lines, the hype season is in full effect right now. But before we do any of that, let's dive into the preseason action from this past weekend. Week 2 of the preseason takeaways. Matthew, and we start with the Kansas City Chiefs, which everybody has their eyes on this wide receiver room. And the one big noteworthy takeaway from week 2 is Xavier Worthy plays 15 of 18 snaps with Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of questions about this room, but it feels like the first rounder, no matter what, is going to be heavily involved.
It seems like it. Certainly, look, no Marquise Brown. Like, I'll douse a little bit of cold water on here because we're about ready to really hype him up. The little bit of cold water here is that there was no Hollywood Brown here. And Justin Watson, who is Marquise Brown's backup, shout out to Adam Levitan, who charted this. But Justin Watson, who's Marquise Brown's backup, ran 14 routes, which was the most routes with Mahomes on the field. The assumption here is that when Hollywood Brown is healthy, he's going to be, him and Rashee Rice are going to be the top 2 receivers in terms of routes runs. Having said that, shout out to my guy Dwayne McFarland at fantasylife.com, right? Xavier Worthy, 25% target share. He led the team with a 68% air yard share. His 89% route participation, slightly inflated, obviously, as I mentioned, with no Hollywood Brown there. But seriously, you think about this. You think about, how last year in the preseason we're talking about, like, Tank Dell's going to be a thing. Xavier Worthy's going to be a thing, guys. Xavier Worthy's going to be a thing. The challenge here is only just because they have so many weapons. Like, with a healthy Hollywood Brown, with Rashee Rice on the field, and obviously Travis Kelce, we expect a big workload for Isaiah Pacheco as well. So just, will Xavier Worthy get enough looks to be a consistent fantasy force? And I don't know. But I will say, I had the guys, shout out to producer Damien and our researcher Big Show. We have Penn State Blake no longer here.
No, he's gone.
He is gone. He's in. We love Penn State Blake, but he went to the.
Did you say he's in a better place? He's a higher place.
Is Blake in heaven?
Yeah,
Blake's in heaven.
Nothing happened to Blake. He's alive.
No, Blake is alive. Penn State Blake is in a better place for him because Penn State Blake is a degenerate gambler, and Penn State Blake is working for a betting company.
Sure.
So
yes,
anyway, got a job on the trading desk of a betting company. So he is actually in a better place specifically for Penn State Blake. But anyway, Big Show, our new researcher, we love Big Show. Anyway, they looked this up for me. Last year, Rashee Rice, wide receiver 28 in points per game. So it says, like, Andy Reid rookies, like, how? Because I feel like you don't really hear, other than Rashee Rice last year, Andy Reid rookies, because it's a complicated offense, but honestly, actually, Tyreek Hill, his rookie year, 61 for almost 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, had 267 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Remember, he had like those crazy returns.
9 total touchdowns.
Yeah. He was wide receiver 21 in points per game. Again, he had some like return touchdowns like that inflated that, but still. Deshaun Jackson, by the way, back in the day, back in 2008, 62 for 912 yards, only had 2 touchdowns. But like, my point is there is a path for Xavier Worthy, even assuming full health for Marquise Brown, which he can never do. But even if Rashee Rice doesn't get suspended this year and Hollywood Brown plays every game, I think there's a path for Xavier Worthy to have fantasy value here. And obviously, because those 2 situations have some volatility to it, there's a chance Xavier Worthy is, I'm not going to say the best rookie wide receiver because we're in a class with Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr., but Xavier Worthy is going to be a thing this year. When you're on the field with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's calling your plays, I know this is a guy you liked a lot coming out of college.
I did, and the biggest question is the weight, right? But this is an offense that's going to be able to keep hands off of him, understand where to use him, and get him working vertically, which is what this offense has been missing, is reliability vertically. And I think that's something Patrick Mahomes, after the game, spoke on Xavier Worthy getting all those snaps. So take a listen to Mahomes' thoughts.
Obviously, you saw that we were kind of majoring in that early, trying to get him some routes where he can go out there and win, and then getting Rashee involved a little bit. You got to find that right balance because you want to not put him in too much harm's way, but you want him to go out there and get some confidence going. It was good to see Carson hit him on that route, and that route wasn't necessarily called for Xavier. It was just kind of an alert, and versus that coverage, and it worked out perfectly. If you get that kind of man type of coverage look, you need the guy. You have to trust that guy's going to win, and obviously you can see that he won. And got that touchdown, and that's good for me to see because then maybe as the game goes on, the year goes on, maybe get a similar type situation to know that he can win versus that one-on-one man coverage is something that I can kind of put in the cabinet knowing that I can maybe bring out later in the year.
So I think with Worthy, there's a couple of things. One, I think you do need to cap the excitement a little bit just because if you were stacking the Chiefs' receiving options, he would still be, when they're all healthy and out there, he'd still be number 4.
Right.
Like still Kelce, Rashee Rice, and Marquise Brown ahead of Xavier Worthy.
For whatever it's Worthy, though, I've seen Worthy go ahead of Brown in drafts. I think it's they're close to each other. They're close to each other, but I think just given the injury history of Brown. Anyway, keep going what you're saying.
The other thing, too, is that I think there is going to be an element where he is something of a floor spacer, even if he's not getting the ball. It'd be like JJ Redick on the Clippers, spacing the floor, and Chris Paul and Blake Griffin will still be Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. But the other thing is that with Mahomes, this is going to be the first time Mahomes has been able to chuck deep, really in 4 years, because even the last year of Tyreek, that was the year where it transitioned to they really took away the defenses just took away the deep ball to Tyreek. Right. I think Mahomes is just going to have so much joy, particularly after last year and Justin Watson and MVS and all the drops and everything. So I think Mahomes is going to have a monster season off of this, but I don't know, with Xavier Worthy, he's going well ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., who has a chance to be a number 1 wide receiver on his team.
That's what's really interesting, right? Is how do you break down? It feels like because of the offense, people are buying into Worthy. I'm with you a little bit. We do have to throw some cold water on this at some point.
I would not want to go into the season counting on Xavier Worthy, right? I would want, hey, these are 2, 3, however many you play. Here's a handful of wide receivers that I feel really good about that if I have to start in any given week, these guys, I feel good about their production. But I love having Xavier Worthy as a flyer, as somebody that hey, if it pops, if Rashee Rice gets suspended, if Hollywood Brown gets injured again, as we've seen it multiple times in his career, or if just Xavier Worthy ends up having a Rashee Rice-like rookie season connecting with Mahomes, and over the second half of last year, Rashee Rice was great. So any of those things, I would love to have Worthy on my roster because I think the upside is massive given his skill set and that offense. But I also think I would not want to count on him from day one of the season, just because they do have a lot of mouths to feed.
Matthew, another deep threat that you have ranked higher is Tank Dell.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting with Tank Dell this weekend is he's technically playing behind Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. He didn't have any snaps in 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers on the field. But, does he really – he could still be effective without that because of the big playability that Tank Dell brings.
And he had a 23-yard reception in this game, called back due to penalty as well. Again, right, he's one of those guys that all he needs is one play to make his week. And I agree with you. If you want to look at the underlying numbers, if you want to throw cold water on Tank Dell, you can mention this again. All my data here is from Dwayne McFarland at FantasyLife.com. Go check out his Week 2 recap. And the utilization report. His route participation so far, this preseason, 64%, right? And so, ideally, you'd love to see him closer to sort of 80. But if there's a positive here, and I think there is, insanely talented, I think they're going to go more 3 wide. He's not locked. They mix and match. They'll put Tank Dell in the slot, they'll put him outside. They can, they put Stephon Diggs in the slot. They're going to mix and match quite a bit, I think, with these guys. And I think also in the preseason, they're just sort of seeing, we haven't seen Joe Mixon yet this year as well. I just know, I don't have a stat for you here. I just know, because I spoke to both these guys directly last preseason. CJ Stroud sat across from me from a table, and when I mentioned Tank Dell's name, his eyes lit up. And when I talked to Tank Dell and I asked him about CJ Stroud, his eyes lit up. And I just know there's a bond between those two guys. And you saw it play out last year on the field. And again, I mentioned this the other week. When C.J. Stroud was asked in an interview to name your best starting lineup in the NFL, give me your 3 best wide receivers, he chose Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and Tank Dell. He didn't take Stephon Diggs. He didn't say Nico Collins. He wasn't being and you go watch that clip with Micah Parsons from Bleacher Report, and he was being dead serious. And so I'm just... Again, I don't have a stat for you, but if for some reason Tank Dell's not getting the ball, C.J. Stroud will fix that over the course of the season. And again, he's going after Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs in the drafts. I've gotten a lot of Tank Dell this season in drafts so far, just because he keeps falling. Because I do think people are worried coming back from the injury, and obviously the addition of Diggs. But Diggs was bad over the second half of last year.
Yeah, I get that. At the same time, Tank Dell right now on Yahoo is going ahead of T. Higgins, Malik, Nabers, Zay Flowers. I'd probably rather those 3 guys over Tank Dell just because of the stability of situation and knowing that they're going to be a top 2 wide receiver on their team.
I definitely would prefer Nabers and who are it?
Higgins and Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
I would take Tank Dell over Zay Flowers.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
too. Just again, I think they're going to be run heavy, especially with Derrick Henry. A lot of Zay Flowers' production last year came with Mark Andrews on the shelf.
44 screens, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean,
Which they'll be there.
It'll be there. And Zay Flowers is really, really good. But I think I'd rather Tank Dell than Zay Flowers as well. It's close with Higgins. I do have a soft spot in my Tank Dell's my guy.
Yeah, he's your guy.
But I definitely, not close. Malik Nabers over Tank Dell.
Yep.
Not close.
Over in the Giants' backfield, Motor Singletary dominates first-team snaps. He played all but 4 snaps in the first half. Tyrone Tracy deals with the ankle injury. This is a backfield that's not pretty. His offense is certainly not pretty from what we saw from Daniel Jones. But Devin Singletary, the pathway is there for him to be a true, somewhat workhorse back that maybe, considering at cost, brings a little bit of value if you need a guy that simply plays.
Yeah, and he plays, which is the main thing, and he's largely, somewhat unopposed in that backfield. The injury to Tyrone Tracy, not as serious as expected initially, but look, he's a Dable guy. He's played with Dable. I don't think they're going to want Daniel Jones to drop back 45 times, especially based on what we saw on the weekend. So I think this offense is going to be, it's a lot of going to be targeting Malik Nabers and then running the ball with Devin Singletary. And the offensive line isn't good in New York, but at least it is better than last year. There is a bit more confidence there.
You know what? I completely agree with you. It's also one of the reasons why I like Tyrone Tracy. Connor and I both, he's one of our sleepers this year. But the fact is that, and I don't want to just dump on Daniel Jones, whatever. He had a bad day at the office, right? But we've seen him be a productive quarterback in the NFL, and I think they'll fix it. But I will say, if you're Brian Daboll and you're watching that tape, because Daniel Jones had just 2 brutal mistakes in that game. He threw the pick 6 from the end zone, and another interception that was just bad, poor decision making. So I think if you're Brian Daboll, you want to try to simplify the offense. And that means running the ball or dumping it off to Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, 2 very good pass-catching running backs as well, and try to limit what you're putting on Daniel Jones' shoulder until he gets his confidence back up. That's the thing to me. It's I don't think it's nearly as bad as Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson, but that was one of the issues I always had with Darnold or Wilson with the Jets. I just think their confidence got so shot because the media was so brutal, their offensive line was so brutal, and I think that's happened somewhat to Daniel Jones after last year. Daniel Jones having the same year that he had last year, but doing it in Pittsburgh, or Cleveland is not the same as having that kind of year in New York.
Yeah, I think it was mainly the O-line. I think he just got rattled and he started seeing ghosts because he was under pressure in sub 2 seconds. It was completely insane. I think the thing with Jones that's an issue too is that, 2 years ago he was really good. He finished as QB9 in fantasy. He had 15 passing touchdowns. All of his value, his surplus value, was 700 rushing yards and 7 rushing TDs. And that's what you worry a bit, I think, off the ACL is maybe he doesn't have the same level of mobility.
An interesting scenario, guys, from the weekend. Zamir White plays deep into the game for the Raiders. Madison took the passing downs, and on top of this, the Raiders also named Gardner Minshew their starting quarterback. Matthew, the Zamir White case is really interesting because there's not a lot of running backs in fantasy that are playing this deep into a preseason game that go on to have a great fantasy season. But at the same time, Antonio Pierce is a little unconventional. They were 6.5-point favorites in this game. We knew they were going to play more noteworthy players deeper into the game. How do you evaluate this one in a backfield that it can be hard to figure out?
It is super weird because one of the teams that did play their starters, long into a preseason game, was the Raiders with Josh Jacobs 2 years ago. Hall of Fame game. And I'll own this. Josh Jacobs was on my hate list that year, and there were a few reasons why. And one of them was that I was just it's a 1-year deal. They're going to just run him into the ground. They don't care. They're playing him in the Hall of Fame game with all their actual starters on the bench. This is going to be a committee, Josh Jacobs isn't going to be used in the passing game. They got Amir Abdullah. They want to use him, blah, blah, blah. I said all this stuff, and I could not have been more wrong. Could not have been more wrong because Josh Jacobs, despite playing in the third quarter of that Hall of Fame game and with the second string backups, ended up having a monster year.
He won the rushing title.
He won the I was just going to say, he won the FedEx rushing title. He very graciously came on our show at the Super Bowl, and I was able to look him in the eye and apologize to him, for doubting him, and he graciously accepted the apology and laughed. It helps when you're sitting there with the big FedEx rushing title, the ground yards trophy. But it's weird, right? It is not something you often see, but the Raiders are one of those teams that has done that. Having said this about Zamir White, Alexander Mattison played more than I thought he was going to in this. You know what I mean? And I worry that Xavier White, we have a very small sample size.
Yes.
Right? Of him being like a productive RB1. Very small sample size. And it's weird because I mentioned Madison, but like everyone last year was crowning Alexander Madison. Oh, Dalvin Cook is gone. Madison's going to be the guy for the Vikings. And like, he just wasn't good. He wasn't ready for prime time. Xavier White was a day 3 pick, right?
Yep.
He was a day 3 pick, not a guy that came into the league with a ton of hype. And so he got an opportunity. But listen, Dylan Lobby is having a really nice camp as well. They clearly like Madison, what they've seen there. Xavier White makes me nervous this year in terms of current ADP.
The problem is the cost. But, Jay, I'll throw it to you like this. We know Madison is not good. We have seen it over and over again. We don't know if Xavier White isn't good. Yeah. So I'd still rather bet on the guy that we think can be good from 3 games, 4 games.
Yeah, 4 games.
But if you're looking at this backfield and thinking like there's an answer here, there is clear risk in the situation.
Yeah, I think people have perhaps just assumed that the last 4 games of last season is just what Xavier White is going to be, where he has 20, 25 carries in some of these games. Like, that wasn't the real team at that point. Like, it's not like it just became Xavier White's show because that's what they wanted to happen. Josh Jacobs was injured. He wasn't there. Xavier White was getting backed up by like Brandon Bolden. There was no one else there. This year they come in with a plan. They brought in Madison. It's also a bit of a concern to me that we all trust Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell was using Madison even at the end of the season, a bit less, but like we didn't understand why Ty Chandler wasn't getting more work. So maybe this is something the coaches like about Alexander Madison.
Okay.
For sure. The other thing that I'll just mention real quickly, some news that like the other thing is that last year, to your point about like they just didn't have anyone. Like they had AOC as their starting quarterback. They have Gardner Minshew. They've officially named Gardner Minshew as the starting quarterback of the Raiders. And look, Minshew isn't great, okay, but he's also not terrible. Like I think he is a legit upgrade over Aiden O'Connell. I think Gardner Minshew is a legit NFL starting caliber quarterback. Like, is he a good starting quarterback? No, but like he's a reasonably professional starting quarterback. Who, by the way, last year, if Tyson Goodson like catches that ball, Tyler Goodson, whatever. I like he dropped the ball. I forgot his name, but whatever. My point is like he's one. Gardner Minshew was one drop pass away from leading a team to the playoffs last year.
Yep. Now you could say Gardner Minshew, that was a bad throw, and that's what Gardner Minshew does, and that's why they missed the playoffs.
It was slightly behind him.
The thing with Gardner Minshew,
that was a catchable ball, though.
The guy should have caught it. It should have been a better throw.
It was a little behind him. Yeah, it wasn't a great throw.
The thing with Minshew is that he is bad in a way that is okay for fantasy, because he's bad in a way where it's like, how did you get strip sacked by 2 guys at the same time? How did you not see either of them coming? Yeah, he's chaos. He'll throw bad picks, but he also puts the ball up for grabs, and he'll be able to support Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers.
He's like the jorts version of Doubs, honestly, at times. Like jorts and long hair version of Doubs, the passer.
I kind of like that comparison. I will, but yes, I think when I tweeted this out is that naming Mark Minshew. He's only for whatever, deep 2 quarterback league, super flex leagues.
Our awful league.
Huh?
He'll be very relevant in our terrible show league.
Yes, exactly. But he is, but I think to the extent that you've invested in Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers or Brock Bowers, I think Minshew over O'Connell is good for the fantasy value of those guys.
I completely agree.
Especially Devontae Adams.
So we got clarity on the quarterback situation in Vegas. We don't have a ton of clarity on the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, as both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have had some struggles. And Mike Tomlin talked about Russell Wilson's preseason debut after the game. Take a listen.
Is somewhat of an incomplete study because you just don't get a chance to see him operate or us establish rhythm and personality when you're not winning possession downs. And we weren't. The first 3 or so series of the game, it was, 3 and out, and you're not going to get an opportunity to establish rhythm or play the way that you would like as an individual or a collective.
Matthew, when does this situation start to become a concern for not these guys, but a George Pickens, the run game a little bit, Pat Freiermuth to an extent? It just looks ugly under center again in Pittsburgh.
And I think when does it become a concern, I think, is 2 months ago when about these moves happened.
And didn't have a better solution?
I mean, I guess like the other option was like Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett. So I mean,
they've got 2 upgrades on both of those
no
guys, and
they're
they're still bad.
Yeah.
They're both better than the previous guys, and
it's
still not working.
I'm nervous about this offense. I'm nervous. Let me rephrase that. I'm nervous about the passing offense of the Steelers for a variety of reasons. Obviously, not just uninspiring to date quarterback play, but also just knowing who. again, we have a lot of fun at Arthur Smith's expense, but the fact is that he has been throughout his career, whether it's an offensive coordinator or a head coach, and now he's back to being the OC, he's been very run heavy. That has been sort of his MO. And I don't expect that to change. And nothing that we saw from the quarterback play this weekend makes you think like, we got to certainly like lighten it up. Especially when you think about like it gets thin quick after George Pickens in the pass catches. You've got Freiermuth at the tight end position, but like, we excited about Calvin Austin? Like, I mean, like I'm in a couple of best ball drafts right now where I'm seeing people draft Justin Fields late. I don't mind that because, again, in a best ball, like if Justin Fields rips off an 80-yard, rushing touchdown, right,
yes,
1,000%. He's fine as a QB3 flyer in best ball, but otherwise, I just don't want this quarterback room.
You know what it means? It's a big season coming for Najee Harris.
It really does, though, especially with the other news, Jay, that Jaylen Warren's going to miss a couple weeks with a hamstring injury now.
You know what Arthur Smith is going to do? Looks as these quarterbacks, no good. Najee, good.
25 carries.
Big-bodied back. He's going to get a lot of work early in the season. And being real, like Najee Harris, I think is going to have a good year. And I think he's going to overperform expectations. He's going as like RB25 at the moment in the same range as your Tony Pollards. I'd rather have Najee Harris. I think that in this offense, he's going to look like the guy closer to the guy that they drafted in the first round.
Yeah, I got a crazy reaction for you. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
I was a year early. Better to be a year early than a year late.
That's 1,000% fair. I don't think it's going to be particularly efficient, but you know what? If he gets 3.3 yards per carry, that doesn't matter for your fantasy league. Just the fact that he gets 22 touches and he falls into the end zone. I am with you. Like, they are going to run Najee Harris into the ground, both because that's how Arthur Smith is, because of the Jaylen Warren situation, and also, the struggles so far of their passing attack. I agree with you that Najee Harris is a very unsexy pick that no one in your draft will be like, oh, Najee Harris. Like, he's basically like a rich man's Ezekiel Elliott this year.
That way. Let's be fair. Jay'd be like, nice pick.
I was super happy to snaffle him in the 6th round last year.
But
Najee Harris was a top 20 running back last year. Now, he was 20th. So, test the bounds. And also, he was only top 20 because he played every single game and averaged 9.8 points per game. But still, he was in the top 20.
But he doesn't really get hurt. No. There's a consistency there. And again, like he is, he's going to be Tyler Algier for the, when Arthur Smith was the Falcons pre-Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
He's going to be Tyler Algier for them. And like Tyler Algier had a perfectly fine, season.
Over 1,000 rushing yards as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree with you. Najee Harris is a completely unsexy value this year.
So we brought up Jaylen Warren's hamstring injury. Let's look at some other notable injuries along with Warren's right now. Jahmyr Gibbs still dealing with that hamstring strain. Jordan Addison with an ankle. Hollywood Brown, we know he's got a significant injury that's going to keep him out for a little bit here. Josh Downs with a higher ankle sprain. That's a significant one as well. And then DeAndre Hopkins, Matthew, dealing with a knee. So plenty of skill position injuries already.
Yes, but there's some optimism out of Tennessee about DeAndre Hopkins being ready for the season.
He should be good to go.
And that's another guy, again, I think similar to Najee Harris, which is just like DeAndre Hopkins going like wide receiver 40.
Yeah.
I think he is still on a talent level. I think he is still a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL in terms of just actual talent. Like, I don't think he's toast at all. Like, he made plays last year. The quarterback play was completely inconsistent, but they're going to be a much more high-octane pass-first offense this year in Tennessee. And I know everyone's excited about Calvin Ridley, but DeAndre Hopkins is a guy that also – the other thing about Hopkins is that even if you feel like he's lost a step, I don't know that it matters with Hopkins because Hopkins is not one of those guys that needs to be open to come down with a ball. Like, he can have a guy draped all over him, and he's still coming down with a ball. Just throw it somewhere in his radius, and Hopkins will come down with it. So I think he's actually, because of the injury and because it's, he's been around for a while, and, there's excitement about Ridley, and we just don't know what we're going to get out of Will Levis. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a value this year. Last thing here, very quickly, positive news coming out of San Francisco about Christian McCaffrey return to practice, looking quote-unquote spry. We haven't seen him in game action yet, but certainly feels like he's clearly on track to start the season healthy and, worthy of the number 1 overall pick. He's my number 1 overall this year, like everyone else.
So that's the significant news from week 2 of the preseason. A couple quick mentions here, Matthew, and you can jump in on any of these if you want. Trey Benson plays on the early downs, no third down or 2-minute snaps. Khalil Shakir only played in 3 wide receiver sets. We saw Mac Hollins in 2 wide receiver sets. Jahan Dotson continues to play more in the slot. Jalen Naylor appears locked in as Minnesota's wide receiver 3. Raheem Mostert played the opening snaps, and Braylon Allen looks cemented as the Jets' number 2 running back behind Breece Hall.
I think Curtis Samuel's being underdrafted, just going after the Khalil Shakir thing. And by the way, Keenan Coleman hasn't done much, but he's playing like every down with the starters. So I just think that's sort of interesting. Braylon Allen, if you're going 0 RB, Denny Carter wrote a great article for rotoworld.com about some 0 RB targets, and Braylon Allen was one of the guys in there. Agree with that. He's looked really good as a Jet, locked in as the backup to Breece Hall, and will have a role. But Raheem Mostert, guys, this is somebody who scored 18 touchdowns last year, and it's just everyone's just sort of,
no one cares.
They're done. No. And I think he's just being drafted way too low. We love Devon Achane. He's still the running back I have ranked higher. He doesn't need a full workload to be explosive, but I think it seems insane to say that we're sleeping on a guy that was like a top 2 fantasy running back last year who scored 18 touchdowns. But I think we're sleeping on a guy who scored 18 touchdowns last year and was a top 2 fantasy running back.
Yep. I think obviously there's an infatuation with Devon Achane, which makes sense given how explosive that he was. But again, like we saw that Achane, he broke down. He's not going to have a workhorse load. Most that is presumably going to be the goal line guy. So I agree there. The other thing too is like Jalen Naylor, but like there is a chance that if Addison misses time, I mean, the injury seems minor, but if he does deal with a suspension, that Jalen Naylor is the number 2 pass catcher, an offense that is going to see Justin Jefferson double teamed constantly. So again, just the lower tier sleeper.
I have no interest in Jahan Dotson, and that's coming from me.
I don't know if the Commanders do, to be honest with you.
He's had a rough camp.
It's not
like
been
they're trying to figure him out in the slot. They're trying to.
That has gone south very quickly.
Yeah, it's really odd.
They don't have enough depth to get rid of him, but like it is for whatever reason, like he's had a bad camp. He's not playing with confidence. That
is a bad miss.
This weekend was better for him than it has been in a while. But this is freaking Homer Berry coming over and saying
that hurts.
I don't want Jahan Dotson. I don't want Jahan Dotson this year.
All right, the notable rookie performances. Let's start with the quarterbacks here. Caleb Williams goes 6 for 13 for 75 yards and a rushing touchdown. Jayden Daniels 10 for 12 for 78 yards, 13 rushing yards. He's looked really good through 2 games. Bo Nix 8 for 9, 80 yards, a touchdown, 12 rushing yards. As we look at the wide receivers, Xavier Worthy 3 for 62 and a touchdown. Malik Nabers 4 catches for 54 yards. Romeo Odunze 1 big catch for 45 yards. Jordan Whittington. Have the Rams done it again? 5 catches for 52 yards.
So I want to come back to Whittington in a second here, Connor. But Williams, everyone's looking at that one clip, where he rolls out and he roll. I'm going to do a bad version of this, but like he just basically runs this and then exactly, and then he just throws this bomb to Odunze like a perfect dime. It just
exactly right.
You're like, oh yeah, that's why he was the number 1 overall pick and the consensus. But so both him and Jayden Daniels look great. But I think the interesting ones from those rookie performances, and God, we love Malik Nabers. I don't care who's throwing the ball, him the ball. But I continue to love Jayden Daniels. But I thought Bo Nix, again, like we talked about this coming out of college, and when he got drafted, just what a perfect fit he is for the kind of offense Sean Payton wants to run, Connor.
If he was going to get drafted top 15 overall, it was going to be by Sean Payton. That's what everybody said, because he's a perfect fit. He understands how to get the ball out. He can run play action. He can do so many different things. And he can run a little bit, too. You saw with the 12 rushing yards. He's athletic enough. They don't have to have him drop back and run around for hours and throw the ball 60 yards down the field. He can play in rhythm. He can play in timing. This is his job. Like, if there was any question about that, I mean, Jarrett Stidham, Payton likes him as a backup. Zach Wilson did not look good at the end of that game. I mean, Bo Nix is going to be a starter this year, and he might be a quietly, not great fantasy starter, but it's like you need a desperate streamer. You're going to be talking about Bo Nix.
You're looking at you're playing best ball. You're playing 2 quarterback or super flex.
Or you're drafting Cortland Sutton with confidence.
1,000%. Also, Tim Patrick. Like, we forget about Tim Patrick because he's had this brutal injury each of the last 2 years, but
he can play.
Tim Patrick can play, and so that's a guy who like literally no one is drafting, and Tim Patrick had a nice game here as well. But I want to come back to Jordan Whittingham, and so there's a 5th-round guy, Connor, but feels like the Rams have once again, like last year, Puka Nacua was a 5th-round guy, and I don't want to call him this year's Puka Nacua, but like the drumbeat out of Rams camp about Jordan Whittingham has been awesome. What for people who don't know Whittingham?
Well, he played at Texas, so he's buried by a lot of great skill talents over the years, right? Xavier Worthy, who we spent the whole open of the show on. I mean, this is really, he was the number 3 or 4 guy at Texas at times, but not that fast. Good possession player. The reason Sean McVay loves him, great blocker. That's what they do. They draft guys that block on the perimeter and catch the football. You don't have to run a 4-3. You don't have to be 6'5". So he's the classic, smart, tough McVay player that, listen, is it going to be Puka or Cooper Kupp? No. But did he draft him in that mold of, I could trust you with the route tree, I could trust you to block, and if we throw the ball your way, beating zone, I'm scheming up against zone, you're going to catch the football. So he's going to hang on this roster.
Yep. Here's someone, Caleb Williams, who had the amazing 45-yard pass to Romeo Odunze that Matthew so beautifully reenacted.
Yes.
But outside of that, didn't look great for the Bears offense. He was 5 for 12 for 30 yards, and they couldn't do anything against the Texans' backup. So I think Caleb Williams is going to be fine. Not too worried about one half of a preseason game, but anointing him as he's just going to be Mahomes this year. Let's see it in a real
definitely
game
not.
first.
I have Jayden Daniels ranked ahead of Caleb Williams by quite a few spots. In Dynasty, I think Caleb is going to be special, but I feel very confident in Jayden Daniels, that ranking fantasy-wise of Jayden Daniels over Caleb Williams, despite what I'm sure everyone's going to be calling me a homer. The other thing about Odunze looked really good. He just caught the one pass for 45 yards, but I'm still concerned about Odunze's production as long as DJ Moore and Keenan Allen are healthy, right? But I'm also worried that Odunze is going to play enough that he's going to eat into Keenan Allen a little bit.
Doesn't help anyone.
It feels like a little bit wide receiver by committee, and they're also going to go 2 tight ends quite a bit. Everett and Cole Kmet eating into each other. I actually want no part of that passing game. I don't mind DJ Moore or Keenan Allen in redraft, and Odunze is obviously great in Dynasty, but it feels like it's going to be a better NFL offense than consistent fantasy offense.
Fantasy football just got better this season, $1 million better. Create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes. Plus, earn extra entries to win when players on your roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game that's on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion to learn more.
Do you think, hey, producer Steven, this is for tomorrow when we promote the Yahoo Fantasy $1 million. You can come back on camera here, Trish, if you don't mind.
Paul Thomas Berry strikes again.
Exactly.
Magnolia, Fantasy Football Happy Hour. What a director.
Yeah. I'm just saying, can we do the Austin Powers? You should just hold a pinky to your lips. $1 million.
What's better than?
We can go to break now, Steven.
Yeah, get us out of here. The Roto World Draft Guide is here for you during the peak of draft season, and this year it has added features. Available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Roto World Draft Guide to help you crush your competition. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off and unlock extensive fantasy, DFS, and betting tools now. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasylife to learn more. All right, guys, 5 sleepers here to target.
Okay.
Let's jump right into it. Number 1, Rico Dowdle. Yahoo ADP of 131.6 here, Matthew. I would be RB49 for a guy that there's a world where he's the running back that gets the bulk of the carries on this roster.
Yeah, look, somebody in Dallas is going to get the ball, right? And I actually think the Dallas backfield, it's not too expensive to just basically get the entire backfield. Dowdle's going after Zeke, but the fact of the matter is that there are 307 touches up for grab with Tony Pollard now in Tennessee. So Dowdle, who has actually led the backfield last year in yards per carry and yards per target last season and scored, 12 or more fantasy points in all but one of his games last year when he got double-digit touches, has showed some improvement. I will also say I kind of like Ezekiel Elliott in the Najee Harris role, which is that I don't know that Ezekiel Elliott is great at this stage of his career, but I also think he's Ezekiel Elliott and that there is something to an NFL locker room. Connor, this is something you can speak to as well because you're around it all the time with the Jets. But I say this about fantasy analysis all the time. We forget that they are players and players are human beings with emotions and that a locker room, an NFL team is like any other business. There are politics and a pecking order.
So are coaches.
And coaches and everything like that. And so my point is it's hard for me to see Mike McCarthy in a team where Jerry Jones sort of controls everything, Mike McCarthy's saying, hey, Zeke, hey, 2-1, go take a seat. I don't know. I think Zeke's going to get a chance. Now, he may ultimately just not still have it. So I think him and Dowdle, but my point is that they may not be the most efficient or effective, but it's going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and somebody is going to run the ball in Dallas, and it's not going to cost you much to, in fact, get one or both of those guys together, and you sort of see who emerges.
Yeah, I think this is the exact type of situation in principle to hunt for an efficiency. The Cowboys last year were the #1 scoring offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, the offensive line is probably a little bit weaker, but it's still the same shot.
The young guys look good, though. They look good.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Yep. Guyton
They've
looks
looked
better
really
than
good this
expected.
summer. And
Yep.
Cooper Beebe. Yep.
It's still Dak Prescott in a dome, CeeDee Lamb spacing the field. So I think that between Zeke, who should get work, and then also on the other side, Zeke is 29 and hasn't had a great year since 2019. So there is an opening for Dowdle. So I think both of those guys can provide value.
Whenever I watch Dowdle, he just looks like a poor man's Pacheco to me. And I'm excited by that, the running style. I just wonder if Zeke eats at the goal line for them, that it hurts Dowdle, who can lead the team with rushing.
I think if you were, this is going to sound insane, but this feels a little bit to me like Ertz and Sinnott in Washington, which is that I think Zach Ertz is going to actually be a productive, reasonably productive fantasy tight end for the first 5 weeks. And then at some point, Ben Sinnott's just going to take over. And I think that, I don't know that he'll be reasonably effective, but I think Zeke for the first 5 weeks is just going to he's going to be the starting running back of the Cowboys and he's getting an opportunity, but I think there's a chance that Dowdle just sort of takes over because at some point Zeke's just going to run out of gas.
Another running back here, Jay, going right after Dowdle at 132.5 is Jaleel McLaughlin. Now, we know Javonte Williams is expected to lead this backfield, but McLaughlin had a big role as a pass catcher at times last year.
Yeah, he did. He was exciting. And I think the main thing here is that I'm not sure if Sean Payton's in love with Javonte Williams and the way that he plays. I think there is an opening there, whether it is Jaleel McLaughlin, your man, Audric Estime as well, I think is actually someone who can be drafted as a late-round flyer. So I think this Broncos situation is very unsettled. And look, it's not going to be an amazing offense, but it seems like Nix is going to be able to run it at a competent level.
The other thing that was interesting is that McLaughlin gets some red zone work. He gets some red zone work. They like the pass catching ability of him as well. And so I agree with you. I think this, just what we're talking about with Bo Nix, I don't think the Broncos offense is going to be great, but I also don't think it's going to be a disaster. And I think they're basically all being left for dead. And the only guy that's being drafted in any sort of reasonable way is Javonte Williams. And he's the guy that makes me the most nervous because I agree with you. It doesn't seem like Peyton loves him. There were rumors at one point that Williams might not make the team. He's going to make the team. But again, I have a decent amount of Audric Estime just
see what happens with it.
See what, Stash. He hasn't had a great camp, it doesn't seem like.
Up and down.
For sure. But for certainly McLaughlin clearly has that third down role kind of carved out, and Peyton has found him. Feels like he's his guy. He was drafted by Peyton last year, and so you could certainly see a scenario where McLaughlin has a third down role with upside for more.
A wide receiver going in this range, Matthew, that 131 range based on ADP is Romeo Doubs. With Green Bay, he led their wide receivers in snap rate, targets, and routes, but he is not being valued above the rest of the guys in this wide receiver room.
No one likes Romeo Doubs, right? Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jayden Reed. These are all guys that routinely get drafted higher. And my point is I ultimately think it's going to be a wide receiver by committee. I think all four guys will have big games throughout the season. It's going to be hard to predict which one in any given week, barring an injury. Watson's obviously struggled with his hammy, but all four guys are going to get run. But if you're we like this offense, we like Jordan Love quite a bit, we think all of them are talented. If you want to take a piece of the Packers passing game, Romeo Doubs is by far the cheapest way to get a piece of the Packers offense. So I think he's really underrated because, again, people are, they remember some of the flashier plays with Wicks or Jayden Reed especially, and of course Christian Watson just, has been a big play guy ever since he came to the league.
I think with people that Doubs has a little bit of a stench because he was so hyped in his rookie season. It's is this guy going to be Devontae Adams? And then he just kind of didn't do much in his rookie year with Rodgers. But last year, he was, to your point, he was the most targeted guy. And I think when there is such a cluster and uncertainty around four guys, there is some rationale in just taking the guy who's the cheapest. And he is that at the moment.
And I think people would be shocked to learn this stat. He was top 6 in the NFL in end zone targets last year. He was top 10 in red zone targets among wide receivers. Like Jordan Love likes to look for him when they get in close. And so again, he's the cheapest of the 4 guys. If you want to take a stab at the Packers passing offense, why not get the guy that's the best value?
Yep.
Another cost-effective option at wide receiver, Joshua Palmer here, Jay. I mean, we say it all the time, but somebody has to catch the ball in this Chargers offense, no matter how little they want to actually throw, and Palmer's right in the mix for them.
Yeah, and look, this offense is still going to take deep shots as well, and I think that there's a good chance Josh Palmer is the wide receiver 1 for Justin Herbert, and just that sentence alone gives him a certain value now. It doesn't seem like Quentin Johnston has really made that many strides. We'll have to see with the rest of the receiver room, but I think Palmer, even though it doesn't feel like it, he is the safest bet.
McConkey's been banged up, too.
Yeah.
McConkey's been banged up, and McConkey's not a guy in college that played a ton of snaps either. Like, I mean, right, so...
No, that was a Brock Bowers-driven offense quite a bit, so...
So I just, again, Josh Palmer, he's had 16 career games where he's gotten at least 7 targets, and he averages 14.4 fantasy points per game. Like, you're telling me you're going to get double-digit, you easily could get double-digit fantasy points from a guy going outside the top 60? He's my wide receiver 51, but like on Yahoo, I think he's going
67.
He's going 67. Like, I mean, it's like...
Yeah. Justin Herbert's the number 1 receiver.
He's right. They're going to throw it to somebody.
Yeah.
They're absolutely going to throw it, and everyone's enamored by McConkey, and I love McConkey and Dynasty too. But even if it's just those 2 guys, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's competing with like Will Dissly for targets and
very
Quentin
narrow.
Johnson. Like, it's just...
Yeah, it's not like this team's going to go 14-3 and be running the ball 70% of the time.
They're
Like,
going
to
to be in good, close games.
Yeah.
Right. The defense is going to take a little while to build it that way. So I'm with you. At some point, you have to be in a throw script in the NFL. You don't always get to decide how much you get to run the ball.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, like you think about the Lamar Jackson-led offenses in Baltimore where they were very run-heavy under Greg Roman. They still had, I mean, Mark Andrews obviously was very productive, but they had productive pass catchers. They had people, they threw the ball.
It's still Justin Herbert.
It's still Justin, right. Like, that's the Bray's point. There's a very good shot he's the number 1 wide receiver for Justin Herbert. Yeah. And he's going outside the top 60. What are we doing, people?
All right, our last one here for today's sleepers, Matthew. Noah Fant
Yeah.
at tight end, ADP of 138. Tight end, that would be tight end 23 here. And this is somebody that has always had the talent and now gets an offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb that we know what kind of passing attack he could develop.
He wants to push the ball, obviously. They'll be much more up-tempo this year, I think more pass-friendly this year. Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly no longer on the Seahawks. Between the 2 of them, that's 66 tight end targets from last year on an offense that I think was more conservative than what we're going to see this year in Seattle as well. There's been only 2 seasons that Noah Fant has actually been able to get on the field and have like a 70% or more snap rate, where he's actually been a starter. And in those 2 years, he was basically a borderline tight end 1. This is a guy that I remember when he came out of college, Connor, that he was
massive ceiling.
Massive ceiling. Yeah. He was a first-round draft pick. And so we think that talent is somewhere in there. And so he's going as tight end 23 on Yahoo, Jay.
Yeah. I've always had a soft spot for Noah Fant. It's kind of like Jake Ballard back in the day. I really like Jake Ballard's work. Noah Fant, for some reason, resonates in the same way. I just want shares of this Seattle team. I think the Seattle team's being very underrated. Their win total is only 7.5. They won 9 games last year, and I think they got better. I think this coaching staff between McDonald and Grubb is going to be a
very
offense.
good.
Geno Smith's just underrated as well. Like, people have kind of moved on from Geno. Geno's fine. Geno's an average to above average quarterback in a loaded receiver, like between JSN, Metcalf, Lockett. I understand that takes away from Fant a little bit, but I just think this offense is going to be really good and in scoring position more than people think.
And by the way, like Walker and Charbonnet, they have a good running back.
I think his offense is loaded. I think the defense with McDonald, who is seemingly the best defensive mind in the sport just about these days, I think this team is going to win 9 or 10 games and make the playoffs, which is like plus 200 for them to make the playoffs.
This Thursday, we are hosting our annual Roto World Draft Marathon, including the unveiling of Matthew's Ride or Die on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right, 10 hours of nonstop draft prep beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern on August 22nd. Check out NBCSports.com/draft marathon for the full schedule. Take one more break. When we're back, it's time for Last Call. We're looking at the early Offensive Rookie of the Year odds. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It is time for Last Call, and fellas, courtesy of our friends at DraftKings, we are looking at the Offensive Rookie of the Year odds. Matthew, I have a feeling who you're going to pick, but enlighten us.
Well, I don't understand why Jayden Daniels is only plus 475. Honestly, it should be like, shouldn't it be minus 150? Let's be clear.
No.
Well, after he leads the Commanders to the Super Bowl, you're telling me this guy and an undefeated season, you're telling me Jayden Daniels isn't going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Unfortunately, they vote after the regular season when the Commanders will have been 15-2 and not won the Super Bowl yet.
All right, well, that's fine. That's fine. 15-2, head into the playoffs. I think Jayden Daniels wins this award. Give me Jayden Daniels at plus 475. Look, in all seriousness, no, I'll make the non-homer case for Jayden Daniels, which is he's the second favorite after Chicago, but like the Commanders are basically picked third in the NFC East, right? You're in a division where you've got the Cowboys and the Eagles, and that if the Commanders make the playoffs, if Jayden Daniels he's going to get 4 shots to go head-to-head twice with Dak Prescott and head-to-head twice with Jalen Hurts. If he beats one of them or both of them, if they split those games, which there's always a chance, right? I just think
plus 300 to make the playoffs.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying
chance.
is that I think that because of his skill set, it'll be showy, and because Washington has been so quarterback poor for so many years that if Jayden Daniels, last time they had a rookie quarterback that led them to the playoffs, RG3, that guy won Offensive Rookie of the Year. So give me Jayden Daniels.
Put up video game numbers and do the same stuff that he did that made him win the Heisman. I'm going a little spicy and going further down the board with the guy taking 1 pick after Jayden Daniels. That is Drake May. Because I think the way to think about this in terms of Drake May is 35-1. I think there is a greater than 50% chance that he is the starter within the first 3-4 weeks of the season. Seems to be trending in that direction. And if he's the starter in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, then he's just going to be like plus 700, plus 800 as a quarterback who was taken top 3. And he doesn't have a great deal to work with. But CJ Stroud, we didn't think he had a great deal to work with last year. Look how that turned out. So Drake May, 35-1. I think he should be half that price.
I think the pressure is turning up, too, from that franchise for him to play out of the gate. I think the fans just need something to be excited about this year. I bet there's a lot of pressure for him to play, especially with some of the plays he's had this preseason. For me, guys, I
just don't think he's going to do well.
Behind that offensive line is the question.
And he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him and everything like that. So
I'm going to go right in the middle and go with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think people have gotten bored of him, and now he needs the quarterbacks to not be good. That's why there's risk in betting him. But I think he's a lock for 1,100, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's playing with a good quarterback in Kyler Murray. The offensive line's going to be better. He's their number 1 wide receiver. I think Marv is the safest pick, as we know quarterbacks go through a lot of ups and downs.
He's also going to be on a team that's probably not going to have a great defense. He's going to be in positive game script for him where they're just throwing a ton, some highlight plays, and obviously having a famous name helps, right?
He's
so
if
the 2 rookie quarterbacks are so-so, I'm with you on Marvin Harrison. All right, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay Gunn and Connor Rogers, I'm Matthew Berry. We'll see you back tomorrow. Peace out! Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.